I'm at Coelap, which is a fortress of the Chachapoyas, which translates roughly to the Cloud People. It's a massive, fascinating archaeological site that there hasn't been a lot of work done on, mostly because it's extremely difficult to get to. As an archaeology major, we get to go abroad every summer and work on an excavation or a survey or project of some kind. I decided to work with Ron Boitner, who is a professor here at USC, and he agreed to take me on his project in Peru in the Vitor Valley. That site is particularly important because it represents this area on the map that's a cross between two cultures, Tiwanaku and Wari, and we're not exactly sure how those two cultures interacted. Like, were they at war? Did they trade peacefully? Like, did one replace the other? So that site is an opportunity to maybe get some more information about that. This is a typical Chachapoyan face, carved also in the entrance to Coelap, and you can see his nose ornament that probably would have been made of bone if it was a real person. And then when I went to Cusco to work at Sacsayhuaman, it's at the very top of Cusco. It's an Inca fortress, and it's historically really fascinating because it's where they sort of made their last stand against the Spanish, and the Spanish overtook them and then used their own fortress against them. One of the really fun things about being an archaeology student is that you notice things that a lot of the tourists that are wandering around wouldn't necessarily see. So there's a bunch of diagnostic sherds just kicking around the site, base sherds and rim sherds, and I actually found a few painted ones earlier. So it's great to be able to put the things that I've learned in class to good use when I'm just walking around as a tourist. We were excavating primarily agricultural steps. It's like a system that they use to try and get more out of the land. It's sort of how the fortress was sustaining itself. This is a 10-meter trench. You can see we left a pedestal with a rock cluster there. You can see the stratigraphy pretty nicely where that clay layer starts. And then as we get up here, there is a terrace wall. The Inca were known for their terrace walls because it let them farm on hillsides and it let them cover a bigger area. Everything we learn in the classroom in archaeology is sort of theory. You know, to actually be standing on a site and realize that it's relevant and that, you know, it's important that I actually paid attention and drew those diagrams when I really didn't want to is kind of cool. One of the most surprising and educational experiences was when we had a shaman come and bless our site, because I mean, you sort of assume that these like ancient religious practices aren't practiced anymore. It was a really moving experience, and it allowed us to feel really connected to the people that we were excavating. Getting to visit Machu Picchu was incredible. The very first time I went with my dig team, and it was this rainy day, misty, and it's just like drifting up across the hills, and you know, you're going up to the top of the hill and you round the corner and suddenly there's this site just sitting there. Machu Picchu, I think, is magical because it's a beautiful site, but I think what makes it more moving is the sort of surroundings that you're in. It's these massive hills all around you, and you can see the sort of snow-capped mountains in the distance. It was amazing. There's just something about ancient cultures that I find really compelling and I guess romantic in a way. To be able to interact with that material culture and hold something in my hand that meant something to someone thousands of years ago is an experience as an undergrad that I would never have gotten at another university.